Warner Brothers, what are you doing? Warner Brothers cannot stop giving L's. L Brothers. We were literally just earlier in the week talking about a whole bunch of Looney Tunes movies that are being made into fruition sometime next year. You had the likes of Bye Bye Bunnies, The Day the Earth Blew Up, and hey, Coyote Vs ACME is one we've long been looking into. I even made a full-on video about this a good year ago, talking about this really interesting idea of Wile E. Coyote going out to sue the company of Acme. And not only was it a project we were keeping an eye on over the past year, it's one that's been fully into production. They've made it already, it's already finished, and now it's been shelved. It's been killed entirely, and it's done. Now this comes as a result of Warner Brothers Discovery and its CEO David Zaslav looking to slash costs amongst all of its companies to find $3 billion in savings somewhere, because they're in staggering debt. As I said, L Brothers. And this new news of cancelling just another fully finished project follows the reporting of Warner Brothers' quarterly earnings, where they made a net loss of $417 million. This company is quickly flushing down the toilet. And David Zaslav apparently saying the company hasn't really been able to crack the kids. Yeah, and it's not going to if you just delete these finished kids' movies. Fully available for the family to see if you gave them the opportunity. This movie was done, it was ready, it was built off of a $70 million budget and is being completely tax written off. Not for $70 million, by the way, it's for $30 million is what this all comes down to, with a loss of $417 million over the last quarter and trying to find savings in the $3 billions. This is 30 million, which is tiny if you're thinking about actually making a saving out of that. Not to mention, movies make more than $30 million. Space Jam 2, another live-action animated hybrid, made $163.7 million. Now sure, maybe you could put that to LeBron James and Bugs Bunny and it being a sequel to an already established love classic weird movie thing. But even that $163.7 million was siphoned out by being simultaneously released on streaming services. In fact, all theatrical animations that have been made by Warner Brothers Animation Group or Animation Pictures or whatever have made over $100 million each, with the one exception being Scoob, because that was exclusively on streaming. This movie doesn't have a particularly large budget compared to all the rest, it's pretty standard, and surely it would have made more than $30 million. Now, as I said, we've already talked about this movie last year, so if you really want to get into some extra details about it, I suggest you have a look over to it, but I'll give you a general overview now, whereby the actual producer and part of the story crafting for this movie came from James Gunn. This was a James Gunn Looney Tunes movie, or at least there was certainly an influence there. We also had the main story being done by Sammy Birch, who wrote the original screenplay. With her previously being known for things like being the writer for May December and a whole bunch of casting department for Hunger Games movies. That's interesting. Now this production was to be directed by Dave Green, who was responsible in the past for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 2016 version, Out of the Shadows. And the whole story was to be based on this one 1990s article of the same name, Coyote Vs ACME, that was published in the New Yorker by Ian Fraser. Now I'm not going to read out the whole thing to you now, but I believe we did in the old video, so check it out. Just a very interesting writing piece. But then with all of that interesting idea, a revival of my personal favorite Looney Tunes character of all time, and just a complete backstab to every crew member and a warning red flag to never work with this company ever again, they announced that it would be shelved and will remain unreleased. In fact, their official statement goes, "With the relaunch of Warner Bros. Pictures Animation in June, the studio has shifted its global strategy to focus on theatrical releases. With this new direction, we have made the difficult decision not to move forward with Coyote vs. Acme. We have tremendous respect for the filmmakers, cast and crew, and are grateful for their contributions to the film." Not only is it weird that they say they're focusing on theatrical releases while deleting a theatrical release, but that final statement of "we have tremendous respect for the people that dug in for the last 3 years" is just so toxic. Now what they're talking about at the beginning of this here is the relaunch of the idea of having a feature animation division. you know, animated films. And having made a deal with Locksmith Animation, the people behind Ron's Gone Wrong, they're now working together on 2 different projects. A musical called Bad Fairies and an adaptation of the Lunar Chronicles. I really like Locksmith Animation and their one movie. I'm so sad they're shackled to Warner Brothers now. There's also some Dr. Seuss themed animations in the work based on The Cat in the Hat and Oh, the Places You'll Go, hoping to release 2 movies a year starting from 2026. If they'd survive that long. And despite clearly having a finished project, a solid idea, and other alternatives to just shelving something and not letting it be released in any form, apparently Warner Brothers just didn't see it financially viable to try to sell Coyote Acme to another studio or to release it on its platform Max. Now maybe releasing on streaming, I can understand. Scoob only made like $6 million, so maybe that is worse than the $30 million tax write-off they got, but financially unviable, they can't sell it? It's just, it's weird. And it's not the only time they've done that. This is a David Zaslav classic. This is the 3rd movie that they have done this to, previously being the likes of Batgirl and Scoob Holiday Haunt. These movies are finished, and they just don't make them. It's not even that they're cancelled halfway through. Batgirl had a budget of $90 million, and Scoob was a budget of $30 million. Like, they're not even massive projects. Just release them. They'll probably make a profit. Especially with the news that this is all lifting up. Everyone's mad. I'm one of them. In fact, it's actually kind of helpful that I'm 1 day delayed on releasing this news because there are so many quotes and resources we can talk about, and we're going to get to it in a moment. But first, another note. All 3 of these cancelled movies were given the green light by Jason Kilar, the former CEO, until David Zaslav took over. You know, he deals some things 2026 onwards, I guess. Until then, screw it. We'll just dig this company further into the ground. It'll make a more action-packed revival. Totally. It's to the point where I think we all kind of expect this from David Zaslav and the new Warner Brothers Discovery. But what if you're like an actual crew member? What if you actually want to get in this industry? I personally would boycott working for Warner Brothers because your work may never come to fruition. And look how many crew members are left devastated after this news. The film editor, Karsten Kapanek, says that they are heartbroken, giving a special thanks to the VFX team, animators, supervisors, and assistants who all work together to bring the project to life. As artists, we pour ourselves into these projects. The film was me for the last 2.5 years. It will always be a part of me. I even got a Wile E. Coyote tattoo on my right arm the week we delivered the movie before I left London, to remind me of the challenges we face while we pursue our goals. This erasure hurt on a personal level. With this write-off, everything gets deleted. Not just what you see on screen, but everything that it took to make the film. A released movie is just the tip of the iceberg of love and labor. The talent and commitment of the people who bring a project to life should not go unnoticed. All of it is now lost, but will never be forgotten by those lucky enough to have been there. The crew for this movie, by the way, were given no notice about the cancellation and the full-on tax write-off plan until after the process had been completed. Though another source says that the filmmakers were at least given advance notice before the announcement was made to the public, so there's a little bit of a gap there between they cancelled it, they finished the process, crew found out, and then it went public. Either way though, like, John Cena, who was the main celebrity casting for this movie, simply posted a Looney Tunes The End on Instagram. I imagine it must also be quite frustrating that you can't even fully put out your words because you're shackled into all sorts of contracts and deals, you know? Can't ruin your career out of some genuine emotion now. One crew member says that they only learn of the decision when contacted by a news source for comments, saying, "I am disappointed. I was looking forward to seeing all of our hard work come to life." So not even everyone really got the no on this. I mean, it's not really a surprise, is it? Now, naturally, just like with me right now, this news came with a lot of backlash by filmmakers and animation outlets and just all sorts of people. There was, of course, in the past, the Bring Back Batgirl hashtag or something like that. And this is just the same. And it's not even always from people in the crew. We've got a handful of other directors and creators in the industry that have come out to say notes about this. For example, director Peter Artentio, known for the likes of the director for the Key and Peele TV series and Keanu, and an episode of the 2020 Twilight Zone, saying, "This is insane. First of all, a business model that incentivizes this. Secondly, this movie is great. I was lucky enough to get to see some, and it's hilarious with incredible animation. What a disgusting turn of events, especially with a huge gaping hole in the release calendar. Yeah, which is very true. We've literally just come out to the other side of strikes, which have put a massive hole in releasing movies, and now that Warner Brothers has the availability to release a movie with the full marketing power of their celebrities being allowed to help advertise it, and they just eviscerate it. Peter's absolutely right. Screw a business model like this. Similarly, we have Peter Briggs, the screenwriter for Hellboy 2004, who said that David Zaslav has turned a functioning movie studio into a mechanism to pay him an obscene amount of money annually while not actually releasing movies. Yeah, he's truly a genius. David Zaslav, by the way, in case you were interested, makes over $3.1 million a year, as well as stock benefits on top, which made him $39.3 million in 2022 and $246.6 million in 2021. Obscene! That's 8 Wile E. Coyote tax write-offs in a year! I think I've just worked out a great way for Warner Brothers to make a good dent in their $3 billion debt. Now, writer-director Brian Duffield, known for the likes of Skull Island, Spontaneous, No One Will Save You, and Cocaine Bear, tweeted, "I have seen this movie and it is excellent. It also tested in the high 90s repeatedly. It had interested buyers. The people working at Warner Brothers are anti-art, and I hope multiple anvils drop on their heads." That's some serious words from the guy who made Cocaine Bear. But yeah, absolutely a great point. There were positive test screenings and interested buyers. So high up in the general ratings. Not only is it a shame that this movie is never getting released, but apparently it was brilliant. The film being compared to the high highs of Who Framed Roger Rabbit by Ben David Grabinski, the guy behind Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, saying, "Coyote Vs ACME was the best of its kind since Roger Rabbit. It's commercial, it tested well, the leads are super likable, it's beautifully shot, the animation is great, the ending makes everyone cry. I thought the goal of this business was to make hit movies." It's baffling that somehow Warner Brothers has lost their way so much by just a simple shuffle up of the CEO and just poor management consistently. As another report says that test screen results awarded this movie 14 points above the norm for a family film. But they didn't want to sell it anyway. Surely a release would make more than $30 million. Some more quotes we have from the direct crew of Coyote vs. Acme, from maybe a slightly less emotive perspective, ironically enough, says, "Warner Bros. Is a mess. They obviously are carrying this staggering debt. They probably have certain minimums and obligations they must owe their creditors, which are motivating them to make bizarre choices. They're just not in sync with how the business has been run. It's devilishly destructive." Meanwhile, David Green, the main director for this movie, came out to say, "I am beyond proud of the final product, beyond devastated by WB's decision. For 3 years, I was lucky enough to make a movie about Wile E. Coyote, the most persistent, passionate, and resilient character of all time. I was surrounded by a brilliant team who poured their souls into this project." And I imagine a lot of these quotes are a lot more nicer simply because they are still somewhat shackled to Warner Brothers to some degree. It's a lot easier to be explosive and emotive when you're completely detached from the project, hence why other filmmakers have been doing it instead. But I can't imagine the seething rage that's going on behind the scenes. The premise of the actual plot we learn a little bit more detailed since the last time we talked about it, with basically it going as, after all the products made by Acme Corporation backfire on Wile E. Coyote in his pursuit of the Roadrunner, he hired an equally unlucky human attorney to sue the company. When Wiley's lawyer finds out that his former law firm's intimidating boss is Acme's CEO, he teams up with Wiley to win the court case against him, with Will Forte as the attorney, John Cena as the CEO, and Lana Condor also there, and Eric Bolzer as Looney Tunes characters. Now obviously Wile E. Coyote doesn't speak, so this would just be other tunes. There is actually some behind the scenes footage that I had shared on my Discord server that I got to look at that shows a lot of behind the scenes details and some insinuations that might have suggested, for example, Porky Pig was in there, running around for some reason. But also, while that was released by the crew in response to this to show some behind the scenes, it also got copyright struck down. Bastards. So I probably am not really able to show you. Though it is interesting to note, Eric Bowser also voices characters such as Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, so it could have been a full-on proper references in there, you know? Such a shame, man. Now, film composer Steve Price also tweeted out that he had a lot of fun scoring Coyote Vs ACME, as no one will be able to hear it now due to bizarre anti-art studio financial shenanigans I will never understand. Here is a bit of behind-the-scenes footage of our Meep Meep Roadrunner choir, with apologies to Tchaikovsky. But yeah, I can at least show you this. Here's a choir performing the Roadrunners Meep Meep from behind the scenes. With development first being announced in August of 2018, the full tale really goes as this. Though there were several changes of crew members and writers over the years, it had still been trucking along since 5 years ago. And though this has already long been filmed, with principal photography starting April 1st, 2022, and all filming finishing by May 28th, 2022, the film missed its initial release slot of July 21st, 2023. And on April 26th, 2022, it was taken off the release schedule entirely, with Barbie taking over its original release date, which also, of course, went on to become Warner Bros.' biggest hit of all time at $1.4 billion worldwide, and yet here we still are, deleting entire movies at the end of it. Surely you'd be able to have a bit more comfort after that, you know? Anyway, during the strikes that came through, obviously, this year, studios were starving for a theatrical production, considering work had been halted by the writers and the actors, and 2024 news has been paused with all these giant gaps. You would expect a new Looney Tunes finished project would be the perfect plug for this hole, especially because it's done. But no, with more crew members saying, quite honestly, we thought it was a slam dunk. I think that's what's so devastating and frustrating. I just don't get it, because it's sitting there and none of us get to see something that's so fun and enjoyable. Or on a more personal and anecdotal note, we have crew member Nate Bannister, who said, I was key assistant location manager on this movie, almost died of stress pulling all the permits, we closed down the entirety of downtown Albuquerque, I had to call in every favor of my career to close an overpass with half a day's notice, I got so many angry calls from neighbors, business owners, etc. day and night. Working on this movie almost tore apart my relationship with my fiancée. Why do I work in this industry? Luckily, if there's anything close to a silver lining, apparently cast and crew will be given the chance to see the movie during a special screening next week in Los Angeles. And then, none of us will, ever again. Sounds like a good time for some sneaky yar har, if you know what I'm saying, but hey, we'll see. I mean, hey, if only. But yeah, there you go. There's one more piece of news from Movie News November. Sometimes it's great with a new Pixar movie, and sometimes it's Warner Brothers. And David Zaslav doing exactly the same as he always does. If I literally wasn't a person who needed to watch these movies for the sake of my job, I would just full on be boycotting Warner Brothers at this point. What a sorry excuse for a company. Completely lost their way of what even is the point of being in this industry. Anyway, on that wonderful news, I'll be ending it off here. My name's been Daz. You didn't really care. Let me hear your thoughts. Let's hear all the angry comments you've got in the world. Just please don't aim them at me. I'm sensitive. And I'll see you in a bit.